History remembers the men who carried swords. It forgets the men who paid for them. Every throne in this list has a shadow behind it. Not a general, not a priest, but a banker, a merchant, a man with a ledger and a very long memory. The families in this countdown did not conquer the world through force. They purchased it through credit and calculation, through patience and network, through the quiet understanding that kings come and go, but debt is forever. These are the 20 families that owned the world. Power usually announces itself. The Barenbergs never did. For more than 4 centuries, they survived by watching empires collapse around them and remaining useful to whatever came next. No battles, no manifestos, just ledgers, and the discipline never to overreach. In the mathematics of survival, invisibility compounds like interest. Napoleon didn't fear Britain's navy first. He feared its bankers. The Barings threaded credit through the courts of Europe for a century, trusted by governments that couldn't trust each other. All of it undone, eventually, not by a rival dynasty or a collapsing empire, but by a young trader who didn't understand risk. That gap between a dynasty and its destruction is always narrower than it looks. Most dynasties are built on conquest. François Grimaldi built his on a disguise. What he seized was less than 3 square kilometers of Mediterranean rock, and his family has held it ever since. Every empire that surrounded Monaco has dissolved. Every monarch who looked down at that tiny territory has gone. The Grimaldis remained. Sometimes the most durable power is the power no one thinks worth destroying. Astor understood what most men miss. The fur runs out, but the land stays. While others chased the next trade, he turned his profits into Manhattan. Not a building, a grid. Block by block, year after year, until the city had no choice but to grow around him. The first great American fortune wasn't made from industry. It was made from the understanding that space is the only thing they cannot make more of. David Sassoon built his empire on a logic so clean it was almost elegant. Find what people cannot stop wanting and control the supply chain. 8 sons, 8 cities, one network that moved faster than any government could regulate. The Sassoons didn't just trade across 3 continents. They operated like a nervous system, each node feeding the center. It was, in every structural sense, a multinational corporation a century before the term existed. Most companies lobby governments. William Jardine did something more direct. He went to the Foreign Secretary personally, laid out his commercial grievances, and within months, a war had begun. A private trading firm used the British Empire as its enforcement arm. The First Opium War wasn't a clash of civilizations. It was a debt collection dispute, pursued at scale. The empire that fought on Jardine's behalf no longer exists. The firm does. A century before the Medici, 2 Florentine families held the financial architecture of Europe. They lent to a king fighting a war he couldn't afford, trusting that sovereign debt was secure. It wasn't. When the default came, both banks collapsed. The first systemic financial crisis in Western history, not caused by recklessness, caused by the belief that a crown was collateral. That mistake has been made in every century since. Cornelius Vanderbilt didn't understand sentiment. He understood leverage. Every fortune he built, in ferries, in shipping, in rail, followed the same logic. Control the choke point, not the commodity. What he could never build was a dynasty that outlasted him. His descendants proved what Vanderbilt himself never grasped. Accumulating a fortune and preserving one are entirely different disciplines. Carnegie's life is usually told as a redemption arc, the ruthless industrialist who became the great philanthropist. That framing misses the point. Carnegie was consistent throughout. He believed that wealth, like steel, was only valuable when it was doing something. The libraries he built weren't penance. They were the second act of the same strategy. Make the world depend on what you produce. First it was steel, then it was knowledge. A diamond has no intrinsic value beyond its hardness and its light. Ernest Oppenheimer understood this completely and built an empire on it. De Beers didn't sell diamonds. It sold the meaning of diamonds, permanence, devotion, proof of love rendered in stone. The slogan wasn't marketing, it was cultural engineering, and it worked across every language and continent. The Oppenheimers didn't mine a resource, they manufactured a desire. There is a name on the barrel of almost every cannon that shaped European history after 1870. The Krupps didn't choose sides in the wars they equipped. They didn't need to. Iron has no politics. The Nuremberg Conviction lasted 3 years. The company built on forced labor was operational within a decade. No institution is more durable than one that makes itself indispensable to power itself. The Fuggers had a rival. The Welsers financed the same emperor, wielded the same credit, and for a brief, extraordinary moment, held an entire colony as private territory. They failed at governing it. The Fuggers understood that money is most powerful when it stays invisible. The Welsers tried to become kings. The difference in outcome was instructive, and the lesson has never stopped being relevant. Ford's genius was systemic. He didn't just build cars, he built the conditions under which cars could be sold. The assembly line, the daily wage, the vertically integrated empire from forest to dealership. All of it required absolute control. His published hatreds reached the desk of Adolf Hitler. The man who democratized mobility could not tolerate democracy. Giovanni Agnelli built an industrial empire. His grandson Gianni built something harder to quantify. By mid-century, the Agnelli name meant not just companies, but the texture of Italian life. Gianni understood that at a certain level of power, the man becomes the institution. He dressed accordingly. He spoke accordingly. He governed Italy without ever holding office, because he never needed to. The Mughal emperor didn't flatter the Seth family with their title, he acknowledged a fact. The Seths controlled Bengal's treasury. At the moment, Bengal was the wealthiest province on earth. When they chose to finance Robert Clive's army at Plassey, they didn't betray an empire. They backed what they calculated would win. They were correct. The consequences lasted 200 years. Almost no one in the West knows their name. The Medici didn't just fund the Renaissance, they created the financial architecture that made it possible to fund anything: the letter of credit, double-entry bookkeeping, the tools that turned wealth from a hoard into a flow. 3 popes and 2 French queens were byproducts. So were Michelangelo and Botticelli. The Medici understood that money, directed with enough patience, could be made permanent. The frescoes are still there. So is the accounting system. The Supreme Court broke Standard Oil apart in 1911. The justices believed they were dismantling a monopoly. What they were actually doing was multiplying it. Every company created from that dissolution became a giant in its own right, and Rockefeller held shares in all of them. His net worth increased after the breakup. The man who was punished for accumulating too much ended up with more. In 1895, the United States Treasury was days from insolvency. No government mechanism existed to prevent it. Morgan provided the gold privately on his own terms, without a mandate from anyone. He did it again in 1907. The Federal Reserve was created shortly after, specifically to ensure that one man could never again be more powerful than the state. Whether that was achieved remains, in certain quarters, an open question. Jakob Fugger did not merely lend money to kings. He lent it with the understanding that they would remember who had. When Charles V was elected Holy Roman Emperor, the electors' votes had been purchased with Fugger gold. Years later, when the emperor hesitated on repayment, Fugger wrote directly to him, calmly, without apology, reminding Charles that without his money, the crown would have gone to someone else. He was right. The emperor paid. Mayor Amschel sent his sons out not as competitors, but as a network. 5 nodes in 5 capitals, all feeding one center. The insight wasn't financial, it was architectural. In the Napoleonic Wars, the Rothschilds financed multiple sides, not from lack of loyalty, but from something more powerful: information advantage. The family with the fastest couriers and the clearest understanding of what would happen next didn't need to choose a winner. They only needed to be positioned when the outcome arrived. They always were.